Hi guys, Jordan from P&B Campers. So I'm just going to do your handover video here on this Timberland Endeavour. It's on a 58 plate, so that's late 2008 or early 2009, and based on the Renault chassis, and if I'm not mistaken, we are on the automatic gearbox there as well. So under the bonnet, we've got on the left hand side here, right in the corner, is the fuel pump. There is also on these Renaults a little priming bulb there, so if you ever need to get any sort of extra fuel to the pump there, you can physically squeeze this little bulb here to get the fuel pumping through. Not that you should ever need to do that, but that's what that's there for. Brake fluid and the servo just behind it, as you can see there, also on the left hand side. Power steering fluid is just here in this left hand reservoir next door to the washer fluid. You then got down lower, you've got the engine oil filling point, so that comes off nice and easily from there. And your engine oil dipstick is next door to that. That's this little yellow cap here. You then got your engine coolant in this reservoir up here at the top. Air filter sits inside this box just here. You have got a little reservoir down the back just there, which you probably can't even see, but it's all to do with your automatic gearbox, so that's your transmission fluid is what that is. Again, unless you're actually a mechanic, you shouldn't really have to get anywhere near that. Engines need to be running when you check them and all that sort of stuff, so I would leave that for when you have a service or whatever when it's due. The engine batteries on these, if I just point out to you physically in the van, the engine battery sits in under the floor underneath this little cover here. So in order for you to easily jump start the vehicle, if it ever goes flat and you need to jump start it, just come here under the bonnet and you will find the positive terminal underneath this little cap here. And it does normally have a little sticker somewhere telling you where to earth it, but if it was up to me, I would be earthing from this little thing here, and I can see that people probably have done in the past, or these two down here on the actual chassis there, they're both earths. So essentially anywhere that you can find a decent earth, positive goes on there, earth goes on wherever you can earth it, and that will jump start the van nice and easily from there. So it's the turbo diesel DCI 120 chassis. I'll tell you what, I'm just quickly going to turn your diesel heater off because it's going absolutely full blast and it doesn't need to. Right. So, as I said, DCI 120 chassis on the Renault. The bonnet release handle is just inside the passenger door just here. Both front seats swivel round, so pull this handle down and then the seat will swivel round as and where you want it to. If I just do that with one hand there, so you can then swivel the seat all the way around really easily. I will also point out that your leisure battery is underneath this passenger seat here, as well as your electric Fiamma awning. So I've got the awning completely wound out, which I will just run you through before we carry on onto the inside, so you can just about see, I mean, this isn't even as far as it goes out, but you can probably see just how big these awnings actually are when you actually use them all the way out like that. So really good size awning, nice and clean, the fabric underneath. If I'm completely honest, I don't think it's been used very much over the years, but I have taken it out, lubricated up all the joints and made sure that it's all working really nicely. So I don't often actually run through the awnings on these videos because I don't always have access to being inside in the showroom here. But if I just quickly run you through, and to be fair, if you are watching this video, generally speaking, you're not going to have an electric wind out awning. It's pretty unusual. In fact, it's very unusual. But the basics of the actual awning itself are the same. Instead of having a winder up there, we've got a little button in here which says retract and extend. So in this particular case, if I want to bring it back in, I will press the retract button and it will just do it for me. But in this case, I'm just going to have it out there so we can show you. So once you've got the awning out to a decent height that you can actually grab hold of it, It's easier when you've got two people, but also not at all a problem if you're just on your own. So basically, once you get it down to a point where you can grab hold of it, because when you wind it out, even just to about here, it will start to sag a lot. You know, you'll be able to hold onto it nice and easily. All you have to do is essentially pull these legs out, which will be sitting inside the lead bar up there. Pull those legs out and extend it by loosening this off and then extending the leg down to the sort of height that you want it. Do that on both sides, and then the only other thing you need to think about really when it comes to putting it up, well, two things really. The feet have got little tent peg holes, so you can peg them down. And also that really, if it's going to be raining outside, you should think about maybe lowering one of the sides so that it's got a little bit of an angle for the rain to run off. When you don't do that, it's not a huge issue because it will find its way off anyway, but if you don't do that and it's exactly level, the water will pool up on the top of it a little bit. So it is also, you know, always a good idea to just have it aiming down just a little bit. When it comes to putting the awning away, it's a little bit awkward with one hand because obviously I'm holding a camera to do it. But putting it away, all you have to do is loosen these handles, well, these little nuts off again, and then bring the leg all the way back up. Put the leg up to the lead bar again, and the only other thing you need to do this time is make sure that the foot down there slides in behind this red piece up here. And as long as the feet are sliding in behind the red piece on both sides, you're absolutely good to go and you can wind the awning back in. So that is the Fiamma awning. As I said, this one's an electronic one, but the basics of it, the way to use it is exactly the same. I'll carry on the outside just for a minute. So we've got these two vents just here. Now these are both to do with your fridge. So if you ever needed access to the fridge, you can get to the back of it through those. And you've got your wastewater drain off point just down here. Nice and easy, just literally from using that handle there. Towards the back of the van, we've got a really nicely working reversing camera on this near side door. Good sized table just there. There will be a pole in the vehicle somewhere for that as well. Another one there. You've got storage in this rear locker down here, which, to be honest with you, all just bits and pieces that the previous owner has left behind. A little bit of oil for the vehicle, the jack and the wheel brace and stuff like that. Just little bits and pieces that you might find handy in the future. Table leg is just there. I will obviously show you how to use all the bits and pieces inside the van when we get inside in a minute, but really, really cool layout in these Timberland vans. So you've got the full size separate bathroom at the back. Obviously the shower door will come over and close off, but yeah, I've always really liked these Timberland vans. Whilst we're at this back door, we've got the toilet cassette locker. So the actual toilet cassette is really simple. It's a Thetford toilet, and you've got a separate flush system on here. So the separate flush, the idea of it is that you pre-mix it and it's your pink fluid that you put into here. And the idea behind the pink fluid is to keep the bowl and everything lubricated and sort of smelling nice as well. So the idea is you keep this at this sort of level here between sort of medium and full. And it works on a U-bend. So even though this isn't full up, when I open this cap here, there will still be fluid in there. All right, so it might look to you now, when you look at that, you might think, okay, that's full, but it's not. So because it works on a U-bend, when you pour anything into this, it won't fill up and blow over. It will literally just start to fill this up. It will only ever actually overflow if you manage to overfill it, but I'd be massively impressed if you managed to do that, because the tanks are like, I don't know, God knows how big, very big. So basically, like I said, just fill these up until you get to this sort of point around here, pre-mixed pink fluid, and then that'll last you a long, long time. Just keep your eye on this level here. When it starts getting down towards the bottom, fill it up back up from there. The actual toilet cassette itself, to remove it, lift up on the green tab and then pull the cassette towards you. This is one of the ones that is on the wheels, so you have got the handle which will pull out. Again, all these things are easier with two hands really. There you go. So the handle pulls out and you can literally wheel it along, which might seem a little bit funny, but it does make your life a hell of a lot easier. But yeah, so the toilet cassette itself, you can then, once you've got it to that position there, you can take it all the way out. The only thing you need to know really on these toilet cassettes, they're pretty simple really, is that you physically drain the cassette out from here. So you take this out and take this green cap off, that's where you physically empty it. When you're emptying it out, you should be holding down the little green button at the back. Some of the different styles, the older Thetford ones, have got a yellow button instead, but it doesn't make any difference whatsoever. This is just the green version. The only other thing is to keep on top of lubricating this rubber seal. So what this rubber seal does is it separates the cassette from the toilet. All right, so it's the rubber seal that physically stops anything in the bowl going into this cassette without you wanting it to. So until you actually open the flap in the bathroom there to allow whatever's in there to go into this cassette, that rubber seal holds it there. So if you allow that rubber seal to go a little bit old and sort of you know, start to sort of break down without lubricating it, then you'll start to basically get, you know what, going past it and into this little locker here, which you obviously don't want. Stuff to lubricate that with will just be your average silicone lubricant. You can buy posh fancy stuff like we've got, but in all honesty you don't need it. You just go down to Halfords or even order it online, just like a silicone lubricant. Even this sort of stuff works pretty well, not that I use it for that, but anything that's sort of silicone based, silicone lubricant, it's cheap as chips and it'll save you a lot of money in the long run, because you know, even these rubber seals around the doors, I mean, I've done all of these as part of the HAD check, but anything rubber basically around a motorhome, silicone lubricant, and it will stop it from just going hard and allowing water to get past it. So you know, it will save you a lot of money and time in the future. Right, so on the off side of the vehicle, we've got, if we get down low, we've got your freshwater drain off. The freshwater filling point is this one just here. So same again with the silicone lubricant, this rubber seal in here also constantly needs, well not constantly, but you know, you need to remember to lubricate that, because if you're driving around and this rubber seal has given up, two things might happen. You might get water leaking back out of here, but you also more likely will really struggle to actually take this off. So when that rubber gets really hard, it's almost impossible to take these caps off. So yeah, just another thing to keep on top of. Your refilling gas point. So if I just get down on the floor and show you, you have had to have a new gas tank fitted. So this is your new gas tank. The tank itself is red, but it looks white from underneath because I have given it a quick dust with a white stone chip. And the reason I've done that is just as, if I show you the old one over here, you can probably tell it had seen better days. One of the main reasons for that, really, I mean, you can't get away from the salty roads in the UK, but one of the main reasons is just because it hadn't been maintained and hadn't had any sort of, you know, stone chip or stone guard, something like that, sprayed on the underneath of it. So to try and, I mean, obviously this is a brand new tank, so it will last you a long time anyway, but just to try and save that from happening again, I have just given it a quick dust to the stone chip, just to kind of give it any extra, you know, a bit of extra support. So the actual tank itself, if I undo this nut just here, bolt really, undo that. So I'm just going to sit up so I can actually do this. Undo that. That will then eventually come off. And the only thing I'm going to show you in here, because you don't really need to know any other bits, is that this little knob just here, it does tell you on there on and off, or open and close, but if you want to turn the gas on, we go anti-clockwise round to the left, that turns this on, and clockwise round to the right will turn this off. Now, because we've done the new tank, I have also done a new regulator, which is up over there. And so that is that. But as I said, the old one was just too, I mean, it wasn't leaking or anything, but it was just too far gone. I couldn't, you know, I couldn't let it go with that one on it. So that's how you do that. I'm going to put this back on in a minute because I will need my eyes under there to line it up. But that's that. And like I said, that's your filling point for the gas. So if you do start to run out of gas, you will need to go to a petrol station that has an LPG filling point. Normally, like the motorway ones or big, you know, the bigger ones tend to have the LPG filling points. You've then got your boiler vent just here. So it's a Truma combi or Truma boiler vent, basically, Ultra Store. And you know, basically the only thing you need to know about that is that you need to make sure this cover here is off before you try and light it up. For two reasons. One, it probably won't light up if you have that on. And two, if it does light up, it's going to go bang, basically, because there's no air to sort of, you know, but there you go. Only other thing I will mention about that, the boiler, this is specific to the boiler, is this little bit here, this little spring-loaded bit. Now, there is a little symbol there telling you what it does, but I will just tell you, that is a Truma sort of idea. So basically, you can't have this window open and have the boiler on at the same time. And the reason I say you can't is because if you open the window up and this thing here loses its connection, it will turn the boiler off. All right, so reason for that is the vent is directly underneath a window, fumes go up, and they'll just come into the van, and basically sort of, you know, carbon monoxide and things like that isn't what you want. So that's why they fitted that there. So I would advise you to leave that where it is, because they are important. And of course, if you take it off, the signal will be broken and it won't work at all. So the diesel filling point is just here inside just by the driver's door. And the chassis plate is just inside here as well. Okay, so what have we got in here? So you've got the sort of fan adjustments and temperature settings here in the middle, just from your standard Renault van. The lights are all on this left-hand stalk here, so the side lights, main beam, and then your front or both fog lights. The horn is also on the left-hand side of this stalk. But if I'm completely honest, I'm just going to run through the gearbox, because they are a little bit different to your average automatic box. So all the time that you're using this handle here, this gear stick, it will naturally go back to the same position. Whatever you do with it, it will always go back to the same position. So all this really does is kind of like point and click in whatever direction or whatever thing you want it to do. Okay, so in other words, if I wanted to put it into reverse, I would do this, because it's down to the bottom right, but it won't actually stay down there. It will go back up to where it was. So as I said, you're basically just pointing and clicking where you want it to go to, and it will then select whichever one you've point and clicked to. So if I want to put it into neutral, I mean, it should be in neutral anyway when you turn the ignition on. Push once to the right, and that puts us into neutral. If I want to put it into drive, I'll push once to the left, and that will then put us into either automatic mode, or it will put it into first gear in the manual mode. If it puts it into the first gear in the manual mode, because you've got auto or manual, push once to the left again, and it will select automatic. If you do want to use the manual mode, you can select manual, just in the same way as I've just done that, and go down or up the gears, just like that. So you can go through up a gear, and it's kind of just like a, you know, you still haven't got a clutch to use or anything, but it will just manually allow you to select the gears. And as I said at the beginning, if you want to select reverse, over and down to the right, and that will then select reverse. You have got the reversing camera up here, obviously wired up properly to an ignition live wire, so it won't come on without the ignition on. But I did use it to get the van into here, so I know that it works really, really well. So really, I think that's about it for the cab, to be honest. You have got this little gauge down here, which will tell you the amount of gas that's in the tank. And the only other thing that I will just show you, they're so easy once you've got the hang of it, but if you haven't used one of these before, you might be a little bit confused by it. So this handbrake here is an sort of, I'm not sure what they call them actually, but it allows itself to drop back down so that you can swivel both the front seats around it. And what I mean by it allows itself to put down is that the handbrake is currently active. It's actually working right now. So the handbrake is fully on, but I can move the handbrake itself around wherever I want. It only stops when I get to the position where it's actually set, and then I can release it. Okay, so now the handbrake's off. Because I've lifted it up to where it stops and then released it like normal, the handbrake is now off, and I can set it like normal. But once I've set it, the handbrake will just flop away again so that you can move the seat around. So hopefully that makes sense. The way to know that it's definitely on or not is that if it is on, you'll have absolutely no resistance there when you do that. If it's not on, like this, you can hear it setting. Okay, so that's the whole outside of the van. I realise that's actually taken quite a long time, but there are quite a few bits to run through on this van, so that's okay. Right, so front seats, really nicely branded Timberland on the headrests there. So, you know, really lovely conversion, really well done. I've always loved the Timberland conversions personally. You've got a awning light just here. Now, I know that doesn't look very bright, and I must admit, I don't think it is a particularly bright one, but it is an LED one. So that's from that left-hand switch just there. The right-hand switch does your lights inside the skylight there. All the rest of the lights in the van have got their own switches, including these little ones in here. By the looks of it, they are all LED lights, or at least, you know, low power ones, nice bright white colors. So once you've turned the control panel on, just by turning the main on and off switch on just here, you should then have power going to all of your lights so that you can turn them on. The control panel here is Timberland branded, but it's a Sargent control panel, and you have got the corresponding Sargent unit under this seat just here. So if I just quickly run you through the control panel, it's nice and easy. You've got this right hand switch at the top here. You don't need to worry about pressing that, and the reason I say that is that all that button there does is basically switch which battery is powering things in the back end. So at the moment we're using the leisure battery, which is the exact one that I want to be using. Okay, if I press this button here, all the lights will then start drawing their power from the engine battery, which just doesn't make any sense. You don't need to do that. The only reason you would ever need to use that or ever want to use it is if your engine battery was completely flat and you had access to a hookup cable. You can sometimes press this button here and it will start to charge the engine battery. And I say sometimes because they're not all wired up that way, but that is really what that button's for. All right, you then got the water pump switch down here and an auxiliary power button there. So now that I've got the water pump switched on, I can come over to the tap here and determine whether or not I've got water in the system. So if I just lift the tap up on the cold side, so that's all good. Got no air coming out there, that's perfect. And then round to the left for the hot, also good. Turn it off and the pump turns itself off. So that is absolutely perfect. Now, if I'm honest, I have fitted a brand new pump to this van because the old one wasn't getting up to any sign of, you know, pressure or anything at all. So there is a brand new pump in this one. So I knew that was going to be fine. But the idea is that when you turn your pumps, you know, your water pump on for the first time, you need to do that. You know, if you go away camping or whatever, by doing that proves to you or allows you to know that the boiler is full of water before you start trying to light it up. All right, and that's really important because if you try and light the boiler up and there's no water in it, it will overheat. All right, so you need to make sure that you check that there's water in that tap there on the hot and the cold side, and that way you know that you're up to pressure. You then got these buttons over on the right hand side. If you flick through here, I'll just carry on through past all. This is all just setting alarms and the timer and all that sort of stuff. Water tank fill, you don't have to worry about that one. Pump select, leave that on internal. Battery current, that's how many amps are being pulled by all the stuff that I've got on. External temperature, wastewater level and freshwater level. You've then got the leisure battery type, which is a lead acid, that's correct. Main supply on, so that means the mains hookup is in and working. Vehicle battery voltage. So if I switch this over now, I'll just show you what it does. There you go. So it does work like that. So because I've pressed this button over here, like I said to you a minute ago, what's happening now is all of these lights are being powered by the engine battery, but because I've got the hookup cable plugged in, it's also now charging the vehicle battery. All right, so if I was in desperate need to start the engine and the engine battery was flat, if you have access to a hookup cable, you can press this button just here, and when you plug the cable in, it will start to charge that battery instead of the leisure. But for the time being, I don't want it on that, so I'm going to switch back over to leisure. So that's perfect. So that's it. So that tells us vehicle battery voltage, leisure battery voltage. And in case you weren't aware, a good resting battery voltage rate is about 12 to 12.5 volts. And a decent charging voltage is anywhere between 13 and 14 volts. Sometimes it can go up even over 14, 14.5 is about where it stops, or at least where it should stop. Yeah, both, all the water levels, the power levels, the voltage, the amps, everything in this is absolutely spot on. So yeah, it's all working really well. So I'm going to leave that as it is at the moment with the power on, pump and aux switch on, and that should then give me access to using absolutely everything in this van, including the fact that I've got the hookup plugged in. So any 240 volt appliances or any 12 volt appliances are now receiving power and should work. So in this particular vehicle, not only have you got the electric wind out awning, but you've also got the electric opening skylight. So that is the skylight over your head there in the middle from this switch just here. So that's basically what that does there. The button to the right of that is your water heater on mains electric. So we're plugged in on the mains at the moment. So now that we've got this little red light on there, the 10 litres of water that's inside the boiler are now heating up via the mains element. And if I didn't have the mains plugged in, but I did have the gas on, I can go once to the right here and the boiler will light itself up from there. So these are the ones that I was saying you have to make sure that cover is off on the outside, because it won't work otherwise, basically. Okay, so, oh, and by the way, if you were wondering why that didn't work just then, it's because there isn't actually any gas in the tank, because it's a brand new tank. So it will need filling up properly at a petrol station before you'll start to get all of your gas coming through. I obviously tested everything in the vehicle and pressure tested it afterwards using the old tank that did have gas in it. Unfortunately, you can't really, you can't take the liquid gas out of there and put it into this one. So there you go. But that's why it didn't work, just because we haven't got any proper gas going to it at the moment. Below that, we've got these two mains sockets. So again, these two won't work unless your mains is plugged in, your hookup cable. And then above that, we've got your diesel heater. So this is an e-dispatcher system. And some people, including me, sometimes get a little bit confused with these controllers. And the reason for that is that you can go through, just like a boiler, where you can kind of set times and days for the heater to come on. And to be honest, the reason that they do that is because e-dispatcher and Webasto mainly are kind of for boats and overnight heaters for trucks and things like that. So less for motorhomes generally. And so, you know, if you're in a truck, you might want to set it so that it'll come on for the morning and stuff like that. But, you know, generally speaking, in a motorhome, you're not really going to need that. Of course, you can use it if you want to, but if you want to just turn the heating on, you press this button here on the right hand side and it'll come up here saying see 1 hour. I can increase that by pressing the button there, and it will just go 1.5, 2 hours, 2.5. But that is basically it. Press that button there, you'll have a little light in the corner here come on, and it will start to heat up after a few minutes. Okay, if you want to turn it off, press the same button again, and it will switch off. All right, so it really is as simple as that. If you actually want to use it, bottom right hand button, and then it should just come to life. Okay, so you've got the 4-burner hob just here, the grill and the oven underneath there. So I'll just check under here. Nope. Okay, so the oven itself, super easy to use. All you have to do is press this very right hand one in, and use your ignition switch there to light them up. That same goes for the grill, the 4 burners. Basically just choose which one you want to turn on, which tells you by the little diagram, whilst holding onto the ignition switch there, and it should just do its thing. Next door to that, we've got the the 12-volt fridge. So the 12-volt fridge, press and hold this button just here, and it will then immediately come to life. You've got a small freezer compartment at the top, and your average just normal fridge in there as well. A little bit of storage underneath there, but that is basically, this is just a 12-volt compressor fridge, and yeah, nice and easy. Looks pretty much new to me as well, but there you go. So if I wanted to turn that off, I press and hold on the button again, and that is the fridge off. If you're the sort of people that want to use a TV in the van, which a lot of people are nowadays, you've got this little section just here. So really, when Timberland were building this van, they were assuming that if you're going to have a telly, it's either going to be mounted on a bracket over here or just freestanding here. And the reason that I say that is because you've got 2 mains sockets here, an aerial socket and a 12-volt socket there. So whether you've got a mains powered telly, 12-volt powered telly, you can use it here with the aerial socket, which is already there and wired up. So when we get into the back end here, we've got this huge amount of storage at the back here with absolutely loads of details, mainly regarding kind of like what you should do, connecting the electric supply. This is a gas safety certificate, sorry. And just various bits and pieces that would have come as standard on the van. There is a microwave in here. It's not plugged in or wired up, so I can imagine that whoever had this van before probably just popped this up here. And I have written on the habitation sheet that I haven't tested this. I mean, I've got no doubt that it probably works, but I haven't tested it because it is an aftermarket thing, and that's not something that we cover. So that's why that's in there, and that's why I haven't checked it. Covered up the top here, again, just more storage if I'm honest. So you can just about hear now the diesel heater is really starting to fire up, and we've got nice warm air, actually really nice hot air coming out from there. So now I turn it off just by pressing that button again. We can see the heating symbol's gone out from here, so it will start to cool itself down now and turn off. In the bathroom area at the back, we've got this little bit at the top here which will stop that from closing over like so, and this piece at the top which allows you to properly close off from the front. So the shower pulls out from the sink, much like a lot of motorhomes nowadays, and that yeah, this piece slides down, covering up from the back. So, you know, it's actually not a bad size for a motorhome shower, if I'm completely honest with you. You know, it's not the smallest that I've seen by any means. But that is your shower and sink compartment there. You've got this little piece here, which if you do it properly, will stop that from opening up, and then you've got access to the toilet underneath. So the only thing that I tend to actually properly run through in the bathrooms is the toilets, because sometimes people haven't used them before and don't know how these work. But it couldn't be any easier. Press the blue button in to pump around your flush fluid. Don't worry about the little bits in there, that's just the flush fluid reservoir. And then open this up. Opening that up there allows whatever you put into it to go into the cassette. I will reseal this in just a minute. I just realised it's not the best sealing in the world. A switch up here for the light. So there you go. So, main things you need to sort of remember when it comes to packing the van up to drive off. Now that I've gone through most of the appliances, well, I've gone through all the appliances. Oh, actually, I'll tell you what I'll do just before I stop the video and have to do another one. I'll just quickly, I mean, I should have done this before really, but I didn't think. So under this seat, just going to pop this cushion out here. Don't worry, it's clean. Under this seat just here, if I lift this up, it does stand up really nicely like that. This is your eBispatcher diesel heater. Doesn't look like much, but they are incredibly powerful and reliable. So under this seat just here, we've got the boiler. So that's this grey section over here. This is the boiler. You've then got your EC325 Sargent power supply unit, or PSU, which, by the way, is where your 240 volt trip switches are under there, and your 12 volt fuses, with a couple of words next to each one of those and each trip switch telling you exactly what it does. So if you have any issues whatsoever with any power related things, come into here and just check all this over. This up here being lit up means that the charger is on, which means that your hookup is plugged in and working properly. As I said, this is your new water pump, so I have fitted that as a brand new Shoreflow Aqua King. And your boiler drain off point is the little yellow tab just down there. So if you lifted that little yellow tab upright, it would drain all the water out from inside the boiler, and that is the only time you ever need to do that really is if you want to winterize the van. So if it's coming up to winter and you're not going to be using the van, you need to make sure that you do that, you drain it out. If you don't drain it out, essentially what will happen is it will freeze inside the boiler if it gets that cold, and it will crack. All of these little pipes around here, any little pipes and gaps inside the boiler itself, they will freeze, contract, and you know, it'll just crack everywhere basically. So make sure that you drain the boiler out from the little yellow tab there if you're not going to be using it throughout the winter. If you're going to be using the van and it's seriously cold outside, you don't even need to think about it, because even you guys being in the van will allow it to get not cold enough to freeze, you know, especially if you're going to be using the heating and stuff, which you probably would be. So, you know, like I say, if you're actually using the van, don't worry about that, just use it as you would normally. But if you're going to be leaving it outside in storage over winter, 100% drain out that water from there, drain out your wastewater tank, drain out your freshwater tank, and leave any taps in the open position. But that's all I can sort of suggest from that point of view. So yeah, when you're getting ready to drive off, make sure all of your skylights are down, make sure all of your windows are closed, and each one of these little latches is fully closed. That's really important, because if you think you can just put the one over, you can, but it'll make a hell of a racket when you're driving down the motorway, I promise you. Make sure your doors are shut, make sure that the awning is fully wound in, and also that you put those feet in the little red bits. Like I said, if you don't put the feet in the little red bits, the awning will not shut properly, and when those awnings don't shut properly, they are not locked. So it's really important to do that. Otherwise, it's just a case of making sure that all of your things are nicely in the cupboards, maybe getting some tea towels underneath stuff, non-slip mats, that sort of stuff, just to stop it making an absolute racket, which they do sometimes. And that is about it. So apologies, it's been a bit of a long video, but there's a hell of a lot to run through in this particular van, so that is the reason. But if there's any questions you've got or anything you think I've missed out, just let us know, and otherwise we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks very much.